Hey, welcome back to another edition of Talking Pro Football. I'm Michael Carlyle. We will get you ready for the division round of the National Football League's playoffs. We'll look back at the news and notes coming out of a wacky wild card weekend, some coaching updates, some legal news, injury updates, and all that good stuff. Before we get to the divisional round and the 4 games coming up this weekend, let's take a look at some news and notes coming out of the wild card weekend. It took 13 seasons. It took 182 regular season starts, almost 50,000 passing yards, over 320 touchdowns. But Matthew Stafford finally gets his first playoff victory this past weekend. He will look to pick up his second playoff win on Sunday when the Rams visit Tampa Bay. Ken Norton has been fired as the Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator. It was Norton's 4th season as the team's defensive coordinator, and it was a rough one. Seahawks ranked 28th in the NFL in total defense and 31st in pass defense this past season. The NFL did this week fined Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Bruce Arians $50,000 for striking his own safety, Andrew Adams. Arians said after the game he was attempting to make sure Adams didn't try to pull players from the pile. Travis Kelce now has 100-plus receiving yards in 4 straight postseason games. There's not a single player with a longer streak in the Super Bowl era. Odell Beckham Jr. became the first player in NFL postseason history to have a 30-yard reception and a 30-yard completion in the same game. At 26 years of age, Patrick Mahomes already has more career playoff passing touchdowns, 22, than each of Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Eli Manning, Warren Moon, and Phillip Rivers. Mahomes is putting up crazy numbers, and there's no reason he should not continue to do so. The Buffalo Bills have punted 0 times in 3 of their last 4 games. They're the first team since at least 1940 to go 3 games without a punt in a 4-game span, including the playoffs. Mike Vrabel's Tennessee Titans have never lost with 8 or more days between games during his tenure. They are 8-0. They had the bye last weekend as the top seed in the AFC, so they are rocking the +8 days off. Cincinnati Bengals, meanwhile, they've never won a playoff game on the road in franchise history. They are 0-7. They are on the road this weekend. Roughly 7 weeks after he had surgery to repair a core muscle issue, Packers wide receiver Randall Cobb is expected to be back this week for Green Bay, and that's a big boost for that Packers offense. Browns defensive tackle Malik Mcdowell was arrested on Monday in Florida on charges of public exposure and assault on a deputy. The team released a statement saying that they are aware of the incident and are gathering more information. And speaking of the Browns, Baker Mayfield this week had surgery for his torn labrum. He is expected to be ready in plenty of time for training camp. Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Willie Gay Jr. was arrested this week for misdemeanor property damage while visiting his son and allegedly got into an argument with the son's mother. Coaching news, Rams offensive coordinator Kevin O'Connell will interview for the Broncos and the Vikings head coaching jobs this week. The Giants are scheduled for a second interview with 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters for their vacant GM opening. Peters is the 3rd known finalist for the Giants, including Buffalo's Joe Schoen and Kansas City's Ryan Poles. Miami Dolphins this week, they will interview 49ers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel, Cowboys coordinators Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore, as well as Cardinals defensive coordinator Vance Joseph for their vacant head coaching spot. All right, let's jump right in and take a look at the divisional round. It will get underway on Saturday. The first game, 4:30 Eastern time on CBS. The Tennessee Titans are 3-point favorites at home against Cincinnati. Like we talked about earlier, as the top seed in the AFC, Titans had last week off. Bengals are coming off their win against the Raiders. Tennessee is expected to have Derrick Henry back after foot surgery sidelined him for 9 games. That's huge for an offense that struggled at times while he's been out. This will be a challenge for the Bengals' run defense, who gave up 4.4 yards per rush this season, and they are missing several key players and have several key players banged up on that front line. The Bengals do have an explosive pass offense, but can that offensive line hold up in front of Joe Burrow? The Titans, they were 25th against the pass this year, but they were 7th in sacks with 47. So protecting Burrow will be a big key for Cincinnati. If they can do that, I think Burrow has a big game. This is Joe Burrow's first playoff road game. That's something to keep in mind, But Joe Burrow has stepped up and faced every challenge put in front of him since he came into the league, developing very quickly as an upper-tier quarterback in this league. He showed no signs of nervousness in last week's first playoff game. I don't expect him to be overly nervous for his first road playoff game, but we'll keep an eye on it. Again, he has answered every challenge put before him so far. I think Burrow does have a big day, as a matter of fact, for the Bengals. The problem is, I think the Titans overall, they have a better game, especially if Derrick Henry can be effective and is somewhere close to 100%, say 90%. 90% of Derrick Henry is better than 100% of most running backs. So assuming there are no problems with Henry, I do like the Titans offense here, and I think that Tennessee pulls out a close one and advances to the AFC title game. The second game on Saturday, this will be 8:15 Eastern Time. It's on Fox. It's in Green Bay. The Packers at Lambeau Field, a 4.5-point favorite against the 49ers. This will be the 9th playoff meeting between these two teams. That series is tied at 4 games apiece. Aaron Rodgers, though, 0-3 against the 49ers in the postseason, for whatever that's worth. 49ers look good on the road, beating Dallas last week, but this will be their 3rd straight road game going back to the end of the regular season. Packers, meanwhile, they're coming off the bye, and they are getting injured guys back. We mentioned earlier in the news and notes, Randall Cobb expected back after his surgery for a core muscle problem. That's a nice addition to the Packers offense. In the regular season, when these two teams met up, Packers jumped out to a 17-0 lead, but they needed a last-second field goal to hang on for the 30-28 win. This game could be a challenge for the Niners, given the status of defensive end Nick Bosa, as well as linebacker Fred Warner. They were both injured in last week's win over the Cowboys. Jimmy Garoppolo is also dealing with thumb and shoulder injuries that he admitted affected his throws late in last week's win. But Jimmy G does have George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, and a good run game against the Green Bay defense that was shaky down the stretch. Look for Rodgers to get Devontae Adams going early and to try to set the tone for Green Bay. Again, he'll also have Randall Cobb back. The Niners are a good team with several weapons, but Rodgers will be the difference in this one. And if history has taught us anything, there's no chance in hell Aaron Rodgers is going to pull the ball down and run late with no timeouts and no way to stop the clock like Dak Prescott did last week against the Niners. So probably don't have to worry about that, Packers fans. I do like Green Bay to hold on and get a tight win in this one. All right, let's move on to the Sunday games. They will start in Tampa Bay, 3 o'clock Eastern Time on NBC for the Buccaneers and the Rams. Tampa comes into this one a 3-point favorite at home. The Rams, though, they've knocked off the Buccaneers each of the last 2 matchups, including a 34-24 win earlier this year. The Buccaneers have some offensive line issues that could play a big role in this one. 3 of their linemen could miss this week's game. That's never a good thing, but especially against a Rams front and Aaron Donald. So watch out for that. You got to get Tom Brady some protection. You've also got to open up a run game that struggled without Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. Tom Brady doesn't quite have the weapons he's used to in Tampa with wide receiver Chris Godwin out with the season-ending knee injury. Of course, Antonio Brown released late in the year. We mentioned the injuries to Fournette and Jones. Neither of them were available for last week. Their status for this week still up in the air. Brady, though, he does have Gronk. He does have Mike Evans, so he's got that going for him. Cooper Kupp, meanwhile, has been a monster for the Rams this season. They'll need another big game from him on Sunday. This is a tough one to pick. For me, though, it comes down to this, and this is something, generally speaking, that served me well over the last, 18 or 20 years. Who are you going to pick in the playoffs? Tom Brady or insert name here? In this case, who are you going to pick in the playoffs, Tom Brady or Matthew Stafford? Exactly. I'll take Tampa Bay here. The final game, Sunday evening, 6:30 Eastern Time on CBS at Arrowhead Stadium. The Kansas City Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites against the Buffalo Bills. Bills beat Kansas City 38-20 at Arrowhead back in Week 5. Josh Allen had 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Bills averaged 21 yards per reception. Except for Patrick Mahomes' scrambling, the Chiefs couldn't run the ball in that game. In football terms, though, that game was a lifetime ago. I wouldn't read too much into that, but it is important for, if no other reason for this, it will give the Bills confidence going on the road to Arrowhead, knowing that they can go into Kansas City, handle that tough atmosphere. So that is a feather in their cap going into this one. Otherwise, I don't know that I'd read too much into the earlier matchup, though. Both teams coming off impressive victories. Mahomes and Allen lit it up last week against their respective opponents. Both teams, though, facing much better defenses this week. The Bills have the top-ranked defense in the league. They built their pass rush in the offseason specifically to beat Mahomes and the Chiefs. Chiefs' defense isn't as good, but they played much better in the second half of the season. They looked good this past week in the wild card round. The Chiefs love to blitz, though, and that's going to leave Josh Allen free to run, make passes on the run, which really plays right into his strong suit. Josh Allen, as good as he is, he's not a great pocket passer. He's much better when he's out in the open. So the Chiefs' affinity for blitzing could actually play into Buffalo's favor. As a matter of fact, I think it does. This one's going to be a shootout. There's no doubt about it. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they're going to get their points, as will Josh Allen and the Bills. In the end, though, I do like Buffalo to pull out the victory here and advance to the AFC Championship. Enjoy all the games this weekend. They're going to be a lot of fun. Our next episode will drop on Monday. We'll look back at the divisional round action. We'll get you the latest news and notes as we get ready to head into conference championship weekend. As always, you can hit up the show. Find us on Twitter at TalkingProFB. You can get me at Real Mike Carlyle. Email us, talkingprofootball@gmail.com. We are out of time. We'll be back again on Monday for another edition of Talking Pro Football here on the After Hours Podcast Network.
Love combat sports? I have a website for you, cageminds.com. That's CAGEDMINDS.com. Fight news from around the world, in-depth interviews, live event coverage, covering combat sports for over a decade. Established in April 2011. That's cageminds.com.